The Laws of Human Nature by Robert Greene. Introduction. In The Laws of Human Nature, Robert Greene introduces the book by emphasizing the importance of understanding human behavior to navigate life successfully. He argues that people often act based on emotions, subconscious desires, and deep-seated psychological patterns, rather than rational thinking. By studying history, psychology, and real-world examples, Greene uncovers the hidden forces that drive human actions, helping readers recognize manipulation, overcome their own biases, and develop stronger social intelligence. He explains that mastering human nature allows individuals to improve relationships, influence others ethically, and avoid being deceived by appearances. Greene warns that ignoring these laws can lead to poor decision-making, misunderstandings, and unnecessary conflict. The introduction sets the foundation for the book's core message. By becoming aware of these psychological tendencies and learning to control them, individuals can gain more power over their lives, develop emotional resilience, and achieve greater success in both personal and professional realms. Chapter 1. The Law of Irrationality. People like to believe they are rational, but in reality, emotions heavily influence their decisions, often leading to irrational behavior. In The Laws of Human Nature, Robert Greene explains that emotions such as fear, envy, love, and anger shape human thoughts and actions, often without conscious awareness. He argues that individuals tend to rationalize their emotions after the fact, convincing themselves that their choices are based on logic when, in truth, they are driven by deep-seated impulses. Greene warns that failing to recognize this irrationality makes people vulnerable to manipulation, impulsive decisions, and self-sabotage. To counteract this, he advises developing self-awareness by observing emotional triggers, reflecting on past mistakes, and cultivating a more detached perspective when making decisions. By practicing mindfulness and emotional control, individuals can gain mastery over their reactions and avoid falling into common cognitive traps. Historical examples, such as leaders who made disastrous choices due to unchecked emotions, illustrate the dangers of ignoring this law. Greene also emphasizes that understanding others' emotional tendencies allows for better persuasion, conflict resolution, and influence in social dynamics. The key takeaway is that true rationality comes not from suppressing emotions, but from becoming conscious of them, analyzing their origins, and learning how to channel them effectively. Chapter 2. The Law of Narcissism. People often associate narcissism with arrogance and self-obsession, but Robert Greene explains in The Laws of Human Nature that narcissism exists in everyone to some degree and influences behavior more than most realize. He argues that humans naturally view the world through the lens of their own needs, desires, and insecurities, leading them to focus on themselves, while assuming others think and feel the same way. This self-centered perspective can cause misunderstandings, social missteps, and strained relationships, as people fail to recognize or address the emotions and viewpoints of others. Greene categorizes narcissism into different levels, from the deep narcissist, who is completely absorbed in their ego and seeks constant validation, to the healthy narcissist, who channels self-love into confidence and achievement without harming others. He explains that extreme narcissists are dangerous because they manipulate and exploit people to maintain their self-image, often using charm, deception, or emotional games to control those around them. However, rather than condemning narcissism outright, Greene advises readers to cultivate self-awareness and empathy, learning to step outside their own perspective and truly understand others. By doing so, individuals can become more persuasive, form deeper connections, and protect themselves from the manipulation of toxic narcissists. He also warns against excessive self-criticism, as healthy self-esteem is necessary for success, and instead encourages developing what he calls strategic narcissism, a balance between self-confidence and genuine concern for others. Understanding narcissism allows individuals to navigate relationships more effectively, avoid being controlled by egotistical people, and transform their own self-focus into a force for personal growth and leadership. Chapter 3. The Law of Role-Playing. People instinctively wear social masks, concealing their true thoughts and intentions to fit into society. And in the laws of human nature, Robert Greene explains how recognizing and mastering this behavior is essential for success. He argues that humans have evolved to be natural actors, constantly role-playing to gain approval, avoid conflict, and manipulate situations to their advantage. However, while some people do this unconsciously, others strategically use it to control their image and influence others. Greene warns that taking people at face value is a mistake, as everyone presents a carefully curated version of themselves, often disguising their true motives. He provides historical examples of individuals who used role-playing to rise to power, showing how skilled actors in politics, business, and society manipulate their appearances to gain trust and loyalty. Rather than condemning this behavior, he advises readers to embrace it consciously, learning how to control their own image while detecting deception in others. He stresses the importance of studying body language, tone, and subtle cues to uncover hidden emotions and intentions beneath the surface. Greene also warns against appearing too obvious or manipulative, as people resent those who seem fake or insincere. Instead, he recommends adopting an authentic but adaptable persona, blending sincerity with strategic performance to maintain influence. By understanding the law of role-playing, individuals can navigate social and professional settings more effectively, build stronger relationships, and protect themselves from those who use deception for selfish gain. Mastering this skill allows people to gain power, avoid unnecessary conflict, and achieve their goals while remaining in control of how others perceive them. Chapter 4. The Law of Compulsive Behavior. People believe they make conscious decisions, but in the laws of human nature, Robert Greene explains that most of their actions are driven by deep-rooted patterns formed in childhood and repeated throughout life. He argues that everyone has compulsive behaviors, repetitive ways of thinking, reacting, and handling situations that they are often blind to. Yet these patterns shape their destiny. Greene emphasizes that these behaviors stem from unresolved emotional wounds, past experiences, and ingrained habits that people unconsciously follow, making them predictable and easily manipulated by those who recognize their patterns. He warns that failing to break free from compulsive behavior can lead to repeated failures, toxic relationships, and self-sabotage, as people unknowingly recreate the same situations over and over. By studying historical figures, Greene illustrates how leaders and influential individuals fell victim to their compulsions, making the same mistakes despite changing circumstances. He advises readers to develop self-awareness by identifying their repetitive tendencies, analyzing their origins, and consciously working to change them. This requires deep reflection, patience, and the ability to step outside oneself to see these patterns objectively. Greene also explains how understanding others' compulsive behaviors provides an advantage in social and professional life, allowing individuals to predict actions, influence decisions, and avoid being manipulated. Instead of reacting impulsively, he suggests breaking the cycle by introducing new habits, practicing mindfulness, and embracing adaptability. Mastering this law enables people to free themselves from self-destructive tendencies, make wiser decisions, and take control of their own destiny, rather than being slaves to their unconscious habits. Chapter 5. The Law of Covetousness. People often desire what they cannot have, and in the laws of human nature, Robert Greene explains that human nature is driven by a deep-rooted sense of covetousness, the tendency to want things more when they are scarce, forbidden, or out of reach. He argues that this psychological force stems from childhood, where limitations and restrictions make certain objects or experiences seem more valuable, leading to a lifelong pattern of longing for the unattainable. Greene reveals that this law governs everything from relationships to consumer behavior, as people are naturally drawn to exclusivity, mystery, and what appears just beyond their grasp. He warns that marketers, politicians, and manipulators exploit this tendency by creating artificial scarcity, generating demand through illusion, and making people believe that something is more valuable simply because it is difficult to obtain. By understanding this dynamic, individuals can recognize when they are being controlled by their desires and learn to detach from impulsive cravings. Greene also explains that those who master this law can turn it to their advantage by making themselves seem more exclusive, playing hard to get in social situations, and strategically withholding information or access to increase their perceived worth. He provides historical examples of figures who used the power of scarcity to build influence, cultivate mystery, and make people chase them rather than the other way around. However, he warns that unchecked covetousness can lead to destructive envy, reckless decision-making, and never feeling satisfied with what one already has. To overcome this, Greene advises developing an awareness of one's desires, questioning their origins, and focusing on genuine fulfillment rather than being trapped in an endless cycle of wanting. By mastering the law of covetousness, individuals can control their impulses, resist manipulation, and use human psychology to their advantage in both personal and professional life. Chapter 6. The Law of Short-Sightedness. People are naturally drawn to immediate rewards and short-term thinking, and in the laws of human nature, Robert Greene explains that short-sightedness is one of the most dangerous tendencies affecting human decision-making. He argues that most individuals, businesses, and even governments make choices based on temporary gains without considering long-term consequences, leading to repeated cycles of failure, crisis, and regret. This impulsive mindset is fueled by emotions, external pressures, and the illusion that short-term benefits outweigh future stability. Greene illustrates how historical figures who prioritized instant gratification over strategic vision often met downfall, while those who exercised patience and foresight gained lasting success and power. He warns that leaders, investors, and individuals who fail to anticipate future challenges or think beyond immediate desires become vulnerable to manipulation, financial loss, and unstable relationships. To counteract this natural inclination, he advises developing the ability to step back, analyze situations from a broader perspective, and delay gratification in pursuit of greater rewards. He also explains that those who understand this law can use it to their advantage by manipulating others' impulsiveness, presenting short-term incentives to influence their decisions, while maintaining a larger strategy for themselves. Greene stresses the importance of emotional control, calculated risk-taking, and resisting the fear-driven urge to act hastily when faced with uncertainty. He suggests studying historical patterns, learning from past mistakes, and adopting the mindset of great strategists who built empires through patience and long-term planning. By mastering the law of short-sightedness, individuals can avoid costly mistakes, make wiser choices, and position themselves for lasting success rather than fleeting victories. Chapter 7. The Law of Defensiveness. People instinctively resist change, criticism, and external influence, and in the laws of human nature, Robert Greene explains that defensiveness is a deeply ingrained human trait that often prevents growth and progress. He argues that when people feel threatened whether by new ideas, opposing opinions, or perceived attacks on their character, they instinctively close themselves off, becoming rigid and unwilling to listen. This reaction is rooted in the ego's need for self-preservation, as admitting fault or accepting outside influence feels like a loss of power. Greene warns that defensiveness leads to poor decision-making, strained relationships, and missed opportunities for learning and improvement. He illustrates how many leaders, politicians, and historical figures failed due to their inability to accept feedback or adapt to changing circumstances, whereas those who mastered this law used patience, subtle persuasion, and indirect influence to avoid triggering defensive reactions in others. He explains that pushing too hard or confronting people head-on only reinforces their resistance, while a more strategic approach, framing ideas in a non-threatening way, appealing to people's self-interest, and giving them the illusion of control, can make them more receptive. Greene advises that individuals should also recognize their own defensive tendencies, practicing self-awareness and emotional control to remain open to constructive criticism and alternative viewpoints. He emphasizes that those who can bypass defensiveness in themselves and others gain an advantage in negotiations, leadership, and personal interactions. By mastering this law, individuals can break through resistance, influence people effectively, and navigate social and professional dynamics with greater skill and success. Chapter 8. The Law of Self-Sabotage. People often blame external circumstances for their failures, but in The Laws of Human Nature, Robert Greene explains that most obstacles in life stem from self-sabotage and conscious patterns of thinking and behavior that undermine success. He argues that individuals unknowingly create problems for themselves due to deep-seated insecurities, fears, and limiting beliefs that shape their actions and decisions. These self-destructive tendencies arise from past experiences, emotional wounds, and ingrained habits that people fail to recognize, causing them to repeat the same mistakes in different areas of life. Greene illustrates how historical figures and leaders who lack self-awareness unknowingly sabotage their own ambitions through arrogance, recklessness, or fear-driven hesitation. He warns that self-sabotage manifests in various ways, such as procrastination, self-doubt, toxic relationships, and impulsive decisions that lead to regret. To break free from this cycle, he advises developing greater self-awareness by identifying destructive patterns, questioning automatic thoughts, and taking responsibility for one's actions rather than blaming fate or others. He emphasizes that emotional control, discipline, and long-term thinking are crucial to overcoming self-sabotage and achieving true success. Greene also explains that those who recognize this tendency in others can use it to their advantage by predicting their self-destructive behaviors and avoiding entanglements with unstable individuals. He encourages readers to cultivate a mindset of resilience, adaptability, and self-mastery, transforming weaknesses into strengths instead of letting subconscious fears dictate their lives. By mastering the law of self-sabotage, individuals can break free from limiting cycles, make better choices, and take full control of their destiny, rather than being their own worst enemy. Chapter 9. The Law of Repression. People often suppress emotions and desires they find unacceptable, but in The Laws of Human Nature, Robert Greene explains that repression does not eliminate these feelings. Instead, it causes them to surface in unconscious. He argues that from childhood, individuals are taught to hide certain emotions, such as anger, envy, or aggression to fit into society, leading them to bury these impulses deep within their psyche. However, what is repressed never truly disappears. It manifests in self-sabotaging behavior, sudden outbursts, passive aggressiveness, or irrational fears. Greene illustrates how historical figures who denied their true feelings often ended up consumed by them, acting in ways that contradicted their conscious intentions. He warns that ignoring or suppressing emotions only makes them more powerful, leading to unintended consequences that disrupt relationships, careers, and personal growth. To overcome this, he advises developing self-awareness by identifying and accepting one's darker emotions, rather than pretending they do not exist. He encourages channeling these energies into productive outlets, such as creativity, strategic thinking, or controlled confrontation, rather than letting them fester beneath the surface. He also explains that those who understand repression in others can use it to predict hidden motivations, decode unspoken frustrations, and gain an advantage in social interactions. Rather than fearing one's emotions, Greene suggests embracing them as a source of strength and insight, allowing individuals to act with authenticity and control rather than being ruled by suppressed impulses. By mastering the law of repression, individuals can achieve emotional balance, break free from self-imposed limitations, and harness their full psychological power for success. Chapter 10. The Law of Envy. People rarely admit to feeling envy, but in The Laws of Human Nature, Robert Greene explains that envy is a deeply ingrained and powerful emotion that silently influences human behavior, often in destructive ways. He argues that envy arises when people compare themselves to others and feel inferior, resenting those who seem to have more success, wealth, status, or happiness. This emotion is dangerous because it is often concealed, even from oneself, leading to passive-aggressive actions, sabotage, and hidden resentment. Greene illustrates how historical figures and leaders have fallen victim to envy, either by being blinded by their own jealousy or by failing to recognize envious individuals who secretly worked against them. He warns that envy is one of the most common yet unspoken forces in human relationships, causing betrayals, workplace conflicts, and social divisions. To counteract this, he advises developing self-awareness to recognize feelings of envy before they take control, shifting focus from comparison to self-improvement. He also explains that those who trigger envy in others must be careful, as envious people can disguise their resentment behind false praise or subtle acts of sabotage. Greene suggests dealing with envy strategically by either downplaying one's success, redirecting attention, or turning potential rivals into allies rather than threats. He also stresses that transforming envy into admiration and inspiration can be a powerful motivator for personal growth rather than destruction. By mastering the law of envy, individuals can protect themselves from its harmful effects, navigate social and professional environments wisely, and channel competitive feelings into positive ambition rather than resentment. Chapter 11. The Law of Grandiosity. People naturally seek success and recognition, but in the laws of human nature, Robert Greene explains that grandiosity, the tendency to overestimate one's abilities and importance, can lead to downfall if left unchecked. He argues that when individuals achieve even a small level of success, they often become intoxicated by their own sense of power, losing touch with reality and making reckless decisions. This inflated self-image blinds them to their limitations, causes them to ignore valuable feedback, and pushes them to take on more than they can handle. Greene illustrates how historical figures who succumb to grandiosity, whether kings, politicians, or business leaders, eventually faced ruin because they believed themselves invincible, dismissing criticism and underestimating obstacles. He warns that grandiosity is often fueled by deep insecurities, as people use exaggerated confidence to mask self-doubt, making them even more vulnerable to failure. To counteract this, he advises practicing humility, seeking honest feedback, and maintaining a realistic perspective on one's strengths and weaknesses. He also explains that recognizing grandiosity in others provides an advantage, as those who feel invincible are often easily manipulated or set up for failure. Greene suggests maintaining a balance between ambition and self-awareness, using confidence strategically without losing sight of reality. He emphasizes the importance of discipline, patience, and continuous self-improvement rather than chasing unrealistic dreams driven by ego. By mastering the law of grandiosity, individuals can sustain long-term success, avoid the traps of arrogance, and remain grounded even as they achieve greater heights in life. Chapter 12. The Law of Gender Rigidity. People often conform to rigid gender roles imposed by society, but in the laws of human nature, Robert Greene explains that true power comes from embracing both masculine and feminine traits within oneself. He argues that throughout history, cultures have enforced strict ideas about how men and women should behave, limiting individual potential and creating unnecessary divisions. However, he points out that the most influential and charismatic figures, whether leaders, artists, or thinkers, have transcended these rigid roles by integrating qualities traditionally associated with the opposite gender. For example, successful men often exhibit emotional intelligence, empathy, and adaptability, while powerful women harness assertiveness, strategic thinking, and resilience. Greene illustrates how historical figures who broke free from gender rigidity a psychological advantage, allowing them to connect with diverse people, approach problems with a broader perspective, and avoid the weaknesses of extreme masculinity or femininity. He warns that those who strictly adhere to societal gender norms may limit their own growth, become predictable, or struggle to navigate complex social and professional dynamics. To counteract this, he advises individuals to cultivate self-awareness and embrace traits that complement their natural inclinations, rather than rejecting them due to societal expectations. He also explains that understanding the fluidity of gender traits in others provides an advantage, allowing for deeper influence, persuasion, and relationship building, rather than being trapped by outdated notions of masculinity and femininity. Greene encourages readers to develop a balanced, adaptable identity that enhances both personal and professional success. By mastering the law of gender rigidity, individuals can break free from societal limitations, expand their psychological range, and unlock a more dynamic and powerful version of themselves. Chapter 13. The Law of Aimlessness. People drift through life without clear purpose, but in the laws of human nature, Robert Greene explains that aimlessness leads to frustration, wasted potential, and a sense of meaninglessness. He argues that many individuals fail to set long-term goals, instead reacting to circumstances and following the path of least resistance, which makes them vulnerable to external influences and manipulation. Without a strong inner direction, people become easily distracted, swayed by trends, or trapped in cycles of procrastination and indecision. Greene illustrates how history's most successful figures had a strong sense of purpose that guided their actions, allowing them to overcome obstacles and maintain focus despite challenges. He warns that those who lack a clear aim often end up serving the ambitions of others, rather than forging their own path. To counteract this, he advises individuals to cultivate a deep understanding of their strengths, passions, and long-term vision, creating a strategy that gives their life direction. He also explains that those who recognize aimlessness in others can use it to their advantage, influencing or outmaneuvering people who lack purpose. Greene stresses that discipline, patience, and the ability to resist distractions are essential for staying on course, as true fulfillment comes from steady progress toward meaningful goals, rather than waiting for inspiration or external validation. He encourages readers to take control of their destiny by setting clear objectives and persistently working toward them. By mastering the law of aimlessness, individuals can break free from passive existence, build momentum toward success, and create a life filled with purpose and intentionality. Chapter 14. The Law of Conformity. People like to believe they are independent thinkers, but in the laws of human nature, Robert Greene explains that most individuals are deeply influenced by the need to conform to social groups, often without realizing it. He argues that humans are wired for tribal behavior, seeking approval and belonging, which makes them susceptible to groupthink and pressure to fit in. This instinct to conform people to adopt beliefs, behaviors, and values that may not be their own, simply to avoid standing out or facing rejection. Greene illustrates how history's greatest leaders and innovators were those who resisted blind conformity, thinking for themselves and challenging societal norms, while those who followed the crowd often remained mediocre or easily manipulated. He warns that conforming too much dulls critical thinking, stifles creativity, and makes individuals predictable, leaving them vulnerable to those who understand and exploit this tendency. To counteract this, he advises developing self-awareness by questioning assumptions, thinking independently, and embracing discomfort rather than automatically agreeing with the majority. He also explains that recognizing conformity in others allows individuals to influence and lead more effectively by subtly guiding group dynamics rather than being controlled by them. Greene suggests balancing social harmony with strategic nonconformity, knowing when to blend in and when to stand apart to maximize both influence and personal freedom. He emphasizes that true power comes from maintaining a strong sense of self while navigating social expectations with awareness and purpose. By mastering the law of conformity, individuals can break free from unconscious societal conditioning, make better decisions, and carve their own path, rather than being swept along by the collective mindset. Chapter 15. The law of fickleness. People are naturally inconsistent in their loyalties and emotions. But in the laws of human nature, Robert Greene explains that fickleness is an unavoidable aspect of human psychology that can be dangerous if misunderstood. He argues that no matter how much admiration, support, or loyalty someone receives, people's feelings are constantly shifting due to boredom, changing circumstances, or new influences. This means that those in positions of power, leadership, or influence must never take support for granted, as even the most devoted followers can turn against them. Greene illustrates how history is filled with examples of rulers, politicians, and celebrities who rose to great heights only to fall because they assumed loyalty was permanent. He warns that people quickly grow tired of those who seem too predictable or overly available, and they often look for fresh excitement or alternative sources of power. To counteract this, he advises individuals to manage their image carefully, maintain a sense of mystery, and constantly reinvent themselves to keep others engaged. He also explains that recognizing the fickleness of human nature allows one to manipulate shifting allegiances, redirecting people's emotions to one's advantage, rather than being a victim of their changing moods. Greene stresses the importance of adapting to new dynamics, sensing when loyalty is fading, and strategically reviving interest before it is lost. Rather than expecting constant devotion, he encourages individuals to remain vigilant, control their public perception, and ensure they always offer something fresh to those around them. By mastering the law of fickleness, individuals can maintain long-term influence, avoid being blindsided by shifting loyalties, and turn the unpredictable nature of others into a strategic advantage. Chapter 16. The law of aggression. People often view aggression as a negative trait, but in the laws of human nature, Robert Greene explains that aggression is a fundamental force in human interactions, shaping power dynamics, conflicts, and competition. He argues that aggression is not always expressed through direct violence or hostility, but often takes subtle forms, such as manipulation, passive aggressiveness, or strategic dominance. Many people suppress their aggressive instincts due to social conditioning, yet this only makes them vulnerable to those who are willing to assert themselves more forcefully. Greene illustrates how history's most successful leaders and strategists understood how to harness aggression effectively, using controlled assertiveness, intimidation, or psychological warfare to outmaneuver rivals. He warns that failing to recognize aggression in oneself or others can lead to exploitation, as those who hesitate to defend their interests often fall prey to more dominant personalities. To counteract this, he advises individuals to become aware of their own aggressive tendencies, neither repressing them nor allowing them to explode uncontrollably, but instead channeling them into productive action, resilience, and strategic thinking. He also explains that understanding the aggressive nature of others provides a tactical advantage, allowing one to predict attacks, defend against manipulation, and assert dominance when necessary. Greene stresses that aggression, when mastered, can be used as a tool for leadership, negotiation, and self-protection rather than reckless destruction. Rather than fearing conflict, he encourages individuals to embrace it as an inevitable part of life and develop the skills to navigate it wisely. By mastering the law of aggression, individuals can assert their power effectively, avoid being taken advantage of, and turn conflicts into opportunities for personal and strategic growth. Chapter 17. The law of generational myopia. People tend to see the world through the narrow lens of their own generation, but in the laws of human nature, Robert Greene explains that generational myopia blinds individuals to the deeper historical forces shaping their lives. He argues that each generation develops distinct values, beliefs, and biases based on the events and cultural shifts of its time, leading to misunderstandings and conflicts between age groups. This short-sightedness causes people to dismiss the wisdom of older generations as outdated, while underestimating the challenges that future generations will face. Greene illustrates how historical leaders and visionaries who understood generational cycles were able to predict societal changes, adapt to shifting attitudes, and position themselves advantageously. He warns that those who fail to recognize these patterns remain trapped in the mindset of their era, resisting progress or repeating past mistakes. To counteract this, he advises individuals to study history, recognize recurring trends, and develop a broader perspective beyond their immediate cultural conditioning. He also explains that understanding generational differences allows one to bridge gaps in communication, anticipate societal shifts, and influence people more effectively. Greene stresses that those who master this law can avoid being swept up by the illusions of their time, maintaining clarity and adaptability in a rapidly changing world. Rather than clinging to rigid generational ideologies, he encourages individuals to remain flexible, learning from both the past and the emerging future. By mastering the law of generational myopia, individuals can break free from the limitations of their era, think beyond fleeting trends, and position themselves for lasting success and influence. Chapter 18. The Law of Death Denial. People go through life avoiding thoughts of death, but in the laws of human nature, Robert Greene explains that denying mortality leads to fear-driven decisions, anxiety, and an unfulfilled existence. He argues that humans instinctively suppress the reality of death, distracting themselves with routines, ambitions, and material pursuits to avoid confronting their impermanence. However, this denial only creates unconscious fears that manifest as irrational attachments, excessive risk aversion, or an obsession with legacy and control. Greene illustrates how history's most enlightened thinkers and leaders embraced death, rather than feared it, using their awareness of mortality as motivation to live with purpose, urgency, and deeper appreciation. He warns that those who ignore death often waste time on trivial matters, delaying important decisions or living passively as if life were infinite. To counteract this, he advises individuals to reflect on their mortality regularly, seeing it not as a source of fear, but as a call to action that sharpens focus and eliminates distractions. He also explains that understanding death's inevitability allows one to detach from petty concerns, embrace risks wisely, and cultivate a sense of inner peace. Greene stresses that people who accept death become bolder, freer, and more strategic in their choices, as they no longer operate from a place of unconscious fear. Rather than avoiding the subject, he encourages individuals to use their limited time as a source of strength, prioritizing what truly matters. By mastering the law of death denial, individuals can live more fully, make impactful decisions, and leave behind a meaningful legacy rather than being paralyzed by fear of the inevitable. In the laws of human nature, Robert Greene concludes by emphasizing that true mastery in life comes from understanding and accepting the complex, often hidden forces that drive human behavior. He argues that most people remain unaware of their psychological tendencies, acting on impulse, emotion, and deep-seated conditioning without questioning their motivations. This ignorance leads to self-sabotage, conflicts, and missed opportunities, making individuals easy to manipulate and control. However, those who cultivate self-awareness and develop a deep understanding of human nature gain the ability to navigate social dynamics with intelligence, strategy, and control. Greene highlights that by observing others without judgment, recognizing patterns of behavior, and managing one's own emotional responses, a person can rise above the unconscious habits that hold most people back. He warns that true power lies not in domination, but in the ability to influence and adapt, shaping outcomes without falling into destructive traps of ego, fear, or irrationality. The key is to balance ambition with realism, emotion with logic, and confidence with humility, ensuring that personal growth is a continuous process. Rather than being ruled by external forces or personal weaknesses, those who master human nature can cultivate stronger relationships, achieve greater success, and approach life with a sense of clarity and purpose. Greene's final message is one of empowerment, By embracing the full spectrum of human psychology, both its strengths and its flaws, an individual can transcend limitations, control their destiny, and navigate the world with wisdom and strategic intelligence.